Now, tracking is natural for the dogs. We don't really need to teach them how to do it. They're born with that capability, and at ages of 1 week to 2 weeks, even before their eyes are opening, as little puppies, they're showing tracking capabilities. They're born with this instinct. We can't teach it. But what we can teach is how to target certain people and how to work in a myriad of conditions and environments. So that's what we're going to do. To begin with, we have to target the human that we're looking for. Every person has their unique individual odor that's different than other people. Okay, and the dogs can actually know which odor to follow and to find based on the presentation of a scent article.
40 officers serve the Wyandotte Police Department, upholding the law to the T.
But now one of their very own is being accused of a deplorable act.
It's usually not something another officer would do.
Officer Kate Barwig has been on the force for 5 years. The 28-year-old tells me that the incident happened in this break room during lunchtime.
Get out my lunchbox, get my sandwich out. I take 1 or 2 bites of it.
Officer Barwig immediately gets called to assist with an unruly prisoner. Upon his return, Officer Barwig was shocked to see his salami Munster sandwich gone.
Then I realized Ice was up here. Officer Ice. I knew that was kind of his track record.
Officer Ice has been on the K-9 unit for 11 years. The German Shepherd is a decorated cop who has assisted several federal agencies. Detective Sergeant Ken Grote says Ice also has hundreds of drug busts under his belt.
He found over 1 kilo of heroin in a wall in a house in Detroit.
The Wyandotte Police Department posted the incident on social media, noting that Officer Ice has pleaded the fifth and asked for public opinion. The post since has gone viral, with thousands of likes and over 8,000 shares. Lieutenant Neil Hunter tells me folks believe Officer Ice is being framed.
Everybody says the face says it all. He's innocent. He's got a handsome face, and he just couldn't do something this heinous.
Now, pretty much every day, Officer Ice receives treats and toys not only from Michigan, but from around the world. He also received his own sandwich.
Where are we now with this investigation?
The public spoke. His attorneys have spoken, several of them, more attorneys than I've ever seen a defendant have. And he's been cleared of all charges, and he's back to work.
However, for Officer Barwig, justice may never be served.
It's different being the victim and just knowing you might not ever get that piece of item back or even food back.
Will you ever get over this and forgive Ice?
Yeah, I forgive him. He's done a lot of good for the city, and you know, maybe he deserves a sandwich. Maybe not my sandwich, but maybe a sandwich.
Welcome in, everyone. Sorry, I thought that was just a cute start for the live stream. The bit that I was interested in was the bit at the start where he was explaining scent dogs in terms of ones that do track individual scents. They are trained to track individual scents, which, anyway, you saw that. I don't need to go into it. Good to see people in here. I've just heard Taka get up. I knew she was going to do this. Taka's had a sleep in. Now she's up and I need to go let her out. So let's start with a bit of an oldie, bit of goodie.
I'm a math man, yeah, I count cans, live in a trailer with rusted pants. Mom's dog's bald, it's got no flair, lost all its hair, and it don't care. Pink blankets, lies I've told again, footprints vanish like phantom friends. I'm Superman, Daniel, faster than wind, stronger than a chopper with a rotor spin. I rake my driveway for my shakes of fist. Super Daniel, yeah, I can't be missed.
I like this one better, I think.
Not allowed on Mama's ATV. She says I drive it recklessly. X wrote her name on my mirror in red. Now I'm searching cool. It's like I lost my head. Dirt roads, rivers, waist high deep. Virginia slims, I puff and leap. I'm Superman, Daniel, faster than wind, stronger than a chopper when the rotors spin. I rake my driveway for my shakes of fist. Super Daniel, yeah, I can't be missed. No, on mama's ATV. She says I drive it recklessly. X wrote her name on my mirror in red. Now I'm searching coverts like I lost my head. Dirt roads, rivers, waist high deep. Virginia slims, I'm puff and leap. I'm Superman, Daniel, arrogant and bold. Strutting pop lines in the cold. Work 1 day a week at the sawmill grind. Super Daniel, yeah, on my time. I'm Superman, Daniel, arrogant and bold. Strutting pop lines in the cold. Work 1 day a week at the sawmill grind. Super Daniel, yeah, on my time.
Even with me running through the woods over the head of the helicopters and head of the drones and stuff like that.
That's a good one.
Sorry. I was hoping to be back before that finished. But, you know, Taka's getting a bit on in age, so she's not a fast mover. So one song wasn't quite enough for her. Okay, just give me half a moment. That dash from the back door back to the computer, back to the desk is always takes my breath away a little bit if I'm trying to be really, really quick. Okay, so going back to some Daniel audio. This is continuing on from yesterday when Charmaine had asked him about Lily and Jack. You know, what were their favourite toys, what were their favourite things, etc. And rather ordinary answer from Daniel, to say the least. So that's what I'm going to cover in this video. Just want to say welcome in to people who are in here. I appreciate you coming. Please hit that like button. It helps me get these out there into the algorithm, helps me get them seen by more people. I am currently working on a video for the Mackenzie Sharilla case, which is looking at an interview that her father did. Spent quite a bit of time on that last night, but didn't get so far because there's so much to look at in terms of the body language. With Jack and Lily, I'm not sure what my next video will be. I haven't looked at that yet. I've got so many other things, so many balls up in the air right now, so many things that I'm juggling. I do want to get back to the audio from the 9-hour marathon, so I'll probably focus on that next and get that 3-hour audio, or the next 3 hours of the audio, condensed down to something a bit shorter, a bit more, something that's a bit more easy to listen to in terms of just referencing what Daniel is saying. And again, no shade on Sonny, it's just that, you know, if you want to listen to what Daniel is saying without the commentary, then that's what my goal is there. Okay, let me bring that video up and we'll carry on from where we were at.
Or they would look for bugs. Like, and I see a lot of misconceptions I seen online. Like, Lily loves bugs as well. And she would not hesitate to grab worms when she seen them. And Jack was much more adventurous than, you know, Lily was with grabbing bugs and grabbing insects. Like, I've watched him grab centipedes before, and he had no fear of bugs at all. And he loved to going around the yard and collecting them. Like, he would have a whole variety in a bucket of everything he could find. And yeah, it was very happy and interesting.
It was very happy and interesting. Again, everything he's said here is exactly the same as what Janie has said. The bugs and the worms, and then he even brings in the centipede. Like, seriously. Anyone would think that that's all those children did. But I'm sure there were other things that they liked to do. Children of that age have a whole repertoire of games that they like to play, things that they like to do. It is kind of amusing, though, that he's saying there, I see a lot of misconceptions. And talking about that in terms of Lily not liking bugs and things. Does he know the origins of that? Because that's what Janie told everybody. So maybe him and Janie need to sit down and consult with each other in terms of what each of them have said. Welcome in, Dawn. Good to see you here. I'm just amazed with Daniel that he keeps saying things that show that him and Janie does the same, they keep saying things that show that they haven't actually consulted with each other over their stories. Now, given that they live on the same property, you would think that they would actually think to do that so that their stories actually match. But apparently that hasn't occurred to them. Even though people are calling them out for inconsistencies, even though people are calling them out for contradictions, it seems like they still haven't sat down and compared notes with each other. The only thing I think that's been introduced here is Jack putting these insects and bugs and things in a bucket and carrying them around. Although I think we did get that impression from Janie when she was talking about the salamander and that she had to take it out, sneak it out of the bucket and put it away somewhere because Jack wanted to keep it. Maybe that's so, maybe that's the real thing. Maybe Jack did like to put his bugs and things in a bucket. That would make sense. There was a bucket that was shown in the footage from the early news footage. Might have been up by those supposed cabins, I guess. Maybe that's what that bucket was used for. Don't know. But it's very much one-dimensional. This doesn't make me feel that I'm getting to know the kids any more than what we already do. And I do think that Daniel had nothing to do with the children. Good evening, May. Good to see you in here. I just feel that Daniel and Janie, the way they talk about Lily and Jack, really these children were just in the way. And it seems like Daniel he just didn't know them. He clearly didn't spend time interacting with them on a personal level, which is to me very, very disturbing. Okay, let's move on. Now, my headphone audio is a bit iffy. How's the actual audio itself? Can I get a 1 in the chat if the audio itself is coming out fine? Maybe it's just my headphones. Hopefully it's just my headphones. I'm not seeing anything in chat, so I hope that doesn't mean that I'm muted or anything. It's fine. Cool. Thanks for that. I don't want to touch my sound box thingy because at least I've got something coming in with my headphones, and if I touch it, then I might spend the next 5 minutes trying to fix it. So I will push on so long as you guys have got audio on your end. Okay, let's keep going with this then.
Interesting, like
Thank you
way
so
of
much for
seeing
sharing
things.
that.
Yeah, I know
Stuff
no one.
that's
I know no one else ever would. So I feel very grateful for the public to actually, listen to me and listen to that.
No one else ever would? Is he serious? Does he even pay attention to what's going on? Because Belinda has told us so much about the children. One of my favourite stories is Lily standing at the screen door squealing at the raccoons. I think that's so cute. And even Cindy has said stuff about them. That, they liked going to the beach and things like that. So, why is, again, it's all about Daniel. He wants to be the hero. That's why he's saying, like, no one else ever would. Well, even Janie made an attempt to try and create an image of who Lily and Jack were. Yes, it was a one-dimensional one, but it seems to have been based on some experiences. And I think someone made a really valid point yesterday that with Janie, it sounds like she was referring to one-off instances and making them sound like they were, ongoing things, like the building the snowbank and stuff like that. And I agree. And I also think that for the most part, her interactions with Lily and Jack occurred when her grandchildren were around. But the point here is that when she came out and did that audio on Facebook back in June or July, she did at least give some impression of what Lily and Jack like to do. And pretty much all that Daniel's done here is repeat Janie's story. Except that he didn't consult with her very well because he's contradicted her, saying that, well, no, that's misinformation that Lily didn't like bugs, and yes, she did like bugs. So I hate it when he does that. It's so frustrating with this whole me thing that Daniel has to do. I'm the only one who's speaking out for them. I'm the only one who's going to tell you what Lily and Jack liked. Well, you've told us nothing, Daniel. Like, seriously. Now, here comes a good one. I was going to put clips together for this, but I think we know some of these bits off by heart.
When you first came on, you used the word grief in relation to how this last year has been. And
Yeah.
Malaya did her interview. She used the word sorrow. When I hear those words, I think of death. I think of a loved one that's not coming back, that I know isn't coming back. Is that how you use those words, or does that mean something different to you?
I think she's been quite generous with him asking that question, to be honest. Welcome in, Happy Turtle. Good to see you here. I mean, when you use the words grief and sorrow, they really do only have one meaning. And that is to do with loss. And children missing isn't the same as children being deceased. And I think the point that she's missed here is not so much about the terminology they've used, but the inappropriate feelings. Because Malaya on day 2 shouldn't be talking about grief or sorrow, whichever it was. We're all filled with pain and sorrow. She shouldn't be saying that on day 2. She should be saying we're extremely worried. We're really concerned. You know, it should be about concern and worry, not pain and sorrow. Yeah, Daniel should know everything like that because he studies YouTube. I don't know how much time he spends, but he seems to be very good at learning from what other content creators say and changing his behavior and his language accordingly. So the fact that he's completely missed the bus with this whole Lily likes bugs or doesn't like bugs just blows my mind. But going back to the grief and the pain and the sorrow, it's just not appropriate, regardless of what it means in their heads. It's not appropriate in the situation. Because, yes, maybe down the track. Now, for Belinda, by about June or July, she was saying, well, you know, when Malaya left, I knew that they weren't coming back. And you could tell that there was grief happening there. But Daniel has maintained for the last 12, 13 months that he believes the children are alive. So for him to be constantly talking about grief and sorrow, or whichever it is that he uses, doesn't fit. Now, his explanation for her question also doesn't fit. But it's also a little bit alarming, and I'll get onto that in a moment.
I think grief is just like another form of sadness, you know, and that's what it was at the start, right? It was like going from having a family of 7 to I wake up every day and it's just only me and the hamsters.
Okay. I know it's probably not appropriate to be making fun of essentially him saying that he's all lonesome, but I couldn't help myself. I nearly used it as a thumbnail, but I figured that people might not like it. But just this whole concept of it's just me and the hamsters just sounds insane. Just me and the hamsters. Poor little Daniel. Straight up, he's saying grief is just another form of sadness. Well, no, it's 2 different things. Grief is a form of sadness, but sadness is not the same as grief. So to say that you're, you know, going through grief, you can't explain it away as I'm just saying that's just a general type of sadness, because it's not. Grief is a very specific thing. It's about loss. And he starts with, that's what it was at the start, right? Well, no, at the start it should not have been grief. So he's given himself away again. Because at the start it should have been stress, anxiety, confusion, all these things. Welcome in, Dodie. Good to see you. And then he puts it all back onto Daniel. Has to be all about Daniel. So it was going from having a family of 7 to I woke up and every day and it's just me and the hamsters. So now he's explaining the grief away as that he's gone from being a family of 7 to just him and the hamsters. Again, that doesn't really apply. Even if he's saying that at this moment in time, he's feeling sad because he doesn't get to see his children. And because, you know, Lily and Jack aren't around and Malaya's not around, you still wouldn't consider that as grief. Because unless you knew that Lily and Jack weren't coming back, then you would view that as a temporary thing. It's not a permanent loss. Grief is something that occurs over a permanent loss. So for him to be saying, you know, going from a family of 7 to just me and the hamsters, and that's why I'm feeling grief, well, that's suggesting that he expects to never see his children again either. Which I doubt that is the case, because Daniel is so arrogant that he no doubt believes that he can talk his way through this. He's already getting access to Meadow, and he probably believes that once he gets all this pesky legal stuff out of the way, that he's going to get access to his children again. So, in his mind, it is a temporary thing. And if he's thinking about Lily and Jack, well, to be quite honest, I don't know if that's a sort of grief that he really can claim. Welcome in, Rocky. Good to see you here. So even though he's trying to explain it away, it just still doesn't fit. I mean, yes, when there's an ending of something in your life, you may feel a sort of grief over it, but you're not necessarily going to refer to it as grief. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say about something that's changed in their life in terms of grief. You feel a sadness that it's gone, and maybe therapists might say it's like grief, but it's not the same thing. He's just basically using this as an excuse for his language. Now I can't find the play button. Oh, that's because I'm not on the right slide. Good on you.
Oh, it was a big life change. And that's, where the sadness and grief came from, because it's just, go from one day of having a life, and I don't want to make this about myself.
Oh, I shouldn't laugh. I don't want to make this about myself. He needs to go back and listen to all his interviews and things from the past 12, 13 months, because that has been all he has done. He has made it about himself the entire time. Honestly. Yeah, I agree. Daniel probably won't see any of his kids again after his plea next month. In fact, I doubt that there's going to come a point where he's not going to see any of his kids again. Whether it is because of these current charges, or whether it's because of what's coming down over the horizon for him. But, there is going to come a time when he's going to be struggling even to get access visits with the baby. Yeah, he's using the technical definition of grief that, yeah, it is therapy speak. But it's not something that people generally refer to. Even if you're someone who's gone to therapy, and your therapist says, what your experiencing is like grief, because, your world's just completely changed, you still don't come out and say that you're feeling grief. Because if you turn around and say to someone, well, I'm grieving right now, they're going to say, who died? or they're going to say, I'm sorry for your loss. And in their mind, they're going to be saying, I'm sorry for your loss, believing that someone close to you has died. Yeah, Daniel irritates everyone. He's just so annoying. But, you know, I don't want to make this about me. That's all you've ever done, Daniel. And then saying, oh, it's a big life change, and that's where the sadness and grief come. Sadness, yes. Grief, again, yeah, therapy speak. But it's not something that you would actually verbalize. He has a picture on Facebook with Baby M, and it looks like he's saying goodbye, in your opinion. Is that a new picture? Because I haven't actually looked at his account for a while. Because there was so many pictures that he was posting non-stop, trying to do the, look at me, I'm a good father. Like, every time he had a visit, he was posting a new picture of her online. And it's like, seriously. Oh, that's a disturbing thought of Daniel making more babies to continue his legacy. Well, let's hope that he ends up in jail before that happens. I would really like to see neither him or Malaya have any more children. Neither of them are suitable parents. And, I mean, I feel sorry for the children that are left. Sorry, I had to have a bit of a yawn there. Hoping the judge holds him till trial. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen, because I think if that was going to happen, that would have already been put in place, I guess. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Welcome in everyone who's coming in now. Yeah, he'll never be a dad, but yeah, he can make babies. He's probably got himself a new girlfriend now, because it seems like him and Malaya defined themselves by being in a relationship, and he needs that for the sense of control. So no doubt, if he's not in a relationship, he's probably looking for someone. Okay. This next part, to me, is disturbing. Yeah, if Malaya does have another boyfriend, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if she does end up having another child. That seems to be the sort of personality that she has. When the child is not so cute anymore and isn't getting you the attention, it's time for another child. And also the locking into the relationship by getting pregnant. Maybe I'm misjudging her, but that's my impression of her from quite early on. Okay, this next bit of audio, let's listen.
From having a life to basically picking up the shattered remains of your life, just like a pane of glass just shattered on the ground. And every time that's what my life's been like for the last year. Every time you pick up a piece of glass, it cuts your hand, so you're forced to drop the glass again. And the pane of glass never gets repaired to its former beauty. All you see is the blood-stricken glass on the ground.
I understand what you mean.
The visuals of that disturb me. Now, I think he used that analogy again in the 9-hour thing with Sunny. I remember reading that when I was going through the transcript and when I was sorting out the audio. First of all, he is dramatizing it. He is going out of his way to try and get sympathy. And he thinks that using this analogy of a broken mirror is going to gain him sympathy. But he goes that extra step and he talks about cutting your hand on the glass and the blood-stricken glass on the ground. That really concerns me. I think it's probably right. He probably has read the shattered glass thing in a phrase book or something. Maybe a family member has given him a book of phrases or something, or maybe there's a web page that he follows that's got all these quotes and phrases and analogies and things like that. Because it does sound like, something that he's picked up from somewhere. But what concerns me is that there's been a lot of leakage from Daniel in terms of the possibility of some sort of violent incident occurring. So, in my video the other day, there was that leakage where he was speaking about, I can't even think what it was, but the way he worded it made it sound like there was a burst of rage from him. And that, he had acted in rage. We have this whole thing with the front door being broken and the bolt or the wrench or whatever it is that they want it to be coming out, and then him saying in the interview with the RCMP that the bit of metal came out. And when I heard that, I said it sounded to me like he was trying to cover up for a broken door. So the losing control, that's the thing that I found alarming. So there's all these references that make it sound like Daniel did perhaps fly into a rage, lose control. And now he's talking about all you see is blood-stricken glass on the ground. When I hear that, the first thing that comes to mind is I really hope that the RCMP went over that place with Blue Star or Luminol. Because even if they really cleaned up, hearing something like that it just gives me a chill and makes me worry that he's not necessarily referring to glass. Because it is a very specific thing to say. It is going far beyond the usual analogy of broken glass. Yeah, Daniel is basically a victim. He's looking back on all this and seeing himself as a victim. This all happened to him. It's not stuff that was caused by him. Yeah, Dodie, I agree. I really hope that they didn't suffer. I hate, that's one side of this case that I try not to think too much about. But then Daniel says things like this, and it just takes me to that place. It's disturbing. Yeah, it is like Sebastian's stepfather. It's also like Mackenzie Sharilla's father. I was listening to his interview, and he was talking about all this happening to Mackenzie. Like, she's not the one that caused it all. She's not the one that got her ass in prison. For him, it's about what happened to Kenzie. Yeah. You wrote a song, Daniel Martel, Your Lives Are Built on Shattered Glass. On day the ancestors are going to see your sorry ass. Yeah, maybe he did see that. He probably did. Yeah, that's a good point, Dodie. Because it's not classified as a crime scene. Because it's still classified as a missing persons investigation. They probably couldn't go in there with Blue Star or Luminol. Unless, well, even if the dog's alerted, I think they still wouldn't be able to until they pivot the case. Yeah, no, she didn't have her foot on the gas pedal for a full 5 seconds, all the way down to the floor. She didn't throw it back into gear when someone threw the car into neutral. All this just happened to poor Kenzie. I'm barely into this interview with Steve Sharilla, and he's already given himself away. He knows she's guilty. He's just talking the talk, which, you know, I'm gonna lose my voice. Great. The guy's a salesman. He truly is. Anyway, I press play so I can have another sip of water.
Or the sorrow of, not having what you once had. I can understand that. So was it normal for Lily to get up and tell Jackie Boyd, hey, let's get ready for school, or we're going to school today, or anything like that, and to take him to the end of the driveway, or was always
No,
you or Malaya up for that?
no, the kids never left the house ever in the morning. The kids never left the house, and the kids wouldn't never attempt to run away when I was there, and that's why.
Now, that's a really disturbing bit of information to offer up. The kids would never attempt to run away when I was there. That's not what the question was. The question was Lily, would Lily get Jack up and say, hey, let's get ready for school, and take him to the end of the driveway? Now, this is going from a lot of early speculation that came from who knows where people suggested that, well, the bag was gone, so maybe they got up and they went down to the end of the driveway to catch the bus and somebody abducted them. And I think this comes from when people were pushing back about Durwood's stories, because people were pointing out how ridiculous his stories were. But to blurt out with never attempted to run away when I was there, like, where's that coming from? I hope they don't give Mackenzie a new trial, because, yeah, what she did, she's going to be paying for that in many, many more lifetimes to come. And she should not ever be given a new trial, and I don't think she should ever be released. Yes, he's actually leading up to the Jack story. So yes, he is implying that they would run off if Malaya was watching them. But here he's saying, first of all, he's like, they never, ever left the house in the morning. Now, I've just rearranged the words a bit to put never and ever together. But he's like, that the kids never left the house ever in the morning. That to me, actually, because he's emphasizing it with never and ever, makes it sound legit. They didn't leave the house of a morning. And who would when it's 2 degrees outside? Or, I mean, that was overnight, so maybe it was a bit warmer by then. But it still would have been below 10 degrees. It would have been fecking cold outside. And, yeah, kids will play out in frost and things like that. They might go out if they see snow and they want to play in the snow, or if there's a really heavy frost and they want to treat that like snow. But they probably didn't go out of a morning. But then he goes on to, the kids never left the house. There's no never left the house at this particular time. He's just, they never left the house. Is this getting closer to the truth? Did they not spend a lot of time playing outside? Maybe, I don't know. But then, yeah, they would never attempt to run away when I was there. He's definitely leading up to the Jack story. But offering it up like that, in that way, it's interesting because according to him, the only instance of them ever running away is this Jack story that he's going to give. Well, that's not them attempting to run away. That's only Jack allegedly running away from Paddy's house. So I think there's kind of more going on here.
In the documents that Malaya said that the kids had a voice, that I had a voice that they listened to. And, you know, because they did listen to me. And
yeah, I bet they listened to you, Daniel, because I bet you yelled at them. I bet they were so afraid that they listened to you and did what you said because they were afraid of the consequences. That picture of Jack with a black eye, that tells me that he would probably very, very likely want to do what you asked him to do, because he would want to avoid another black eye. Yeah, definitely out of fear. The first time, as soon as I read that in the documents, I thought, this guy had these kids scared. They were afraid of putting a foot out of line because they were afraid of what Daniel would do. Yeah, Malaya in the dockets, she said, when she called 911, she said they are known to wander. But then when she was sitting down doing her interview with the RCMP that same day, she said they were not known to wander. They weren't the sort of kids that would wander off. Now, this anecdote that Daniel has about Jack wandering off, which he'll get to in a minute, this is apparently when Jack was 2 or something. When that information first came out, I asked Belinda if she'd ever heard the story, and she hadn't, which doesn't surprise me. So let's listen to the story first.
You know, it was never, the kids never, they ran away with, I mean, Jack ran away once with Malaya. And, you know, Malaya did eventually find him after like 20 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to read this comment first. Okay, hang on. Peter Hyatt pointed out that it is a big red flag when a child is missing and the stepfather is frequently talking about discipline. Yes, it always is. Especially when you have a mother saying he had a voice they would listen to or something like that. That is definitely, in my opinion, a situation where they were scared of him. They were scared of putting a foot wrong. These kids were living in a constant sense of fight or flight, never knowing if what they were going to do was going to result in Daniel blowing his top at them for something. Janie's comment about allegedly the Friday morning, and I don't think it is. I think she's just drawing on past events, saying that she heard Daniel yelling for the kids, but she didn't think anything of it because she's essentially saying it was normal for him to yell at Jack for something, for letting the chickens out or for whatever. Seriously, even Janie has told us that these kids were being yelled at constantly by Daniel at the very least. Usually scared to death in the scared to breathe in the perpetrator's presence. Then when the mum has them on her own, they're usually so naughty and dull of energy from being so quiet and still. Yeah, exactly. It's, if he's not around, that's when you get to release that sense of fight or flight. And that's when they get to act like kids. And so maybe that is seen as acting up. But it's not just that. The way him and Malaya talk, to me, makes it very clear that from very, very early on in the relationship, he was undermining her as a parent. He was telling her that she was not disciplining them properly. We heard Belinda say that Malaya was quite quiet with the kids, and she would say, no, look, don't do that. So apparently, in Daniel's eyes, that's poor parenting. And it sounds like he has spent the 2 or 3 years that they were together just constantly undermining Malaya's confidence in herself as a parent, to the point where she was an ineffective parent. Now, this is not excusing her for what happened to these children, but this is just giving us an understanding of how we got to that point. He removed her capability of being a good parent. Running away. Jack wanted to go to the playground and no one could take him, so he went on his own. Yeah, quite likely. Yes, drug use is going to cause lack of sleep, lack of patience. And I'm still not convinced that Malaya didn't do drugs. When we hear about her behaviour with Cheryl, sounds like she really enjoyed being that sort of party girl. And even when Daniel was trying to say, no, Malaya didn't use the heavy stuff, he was being evasive when he was saying that. So I don't know if it's, something that they had agreed upon in terms of not saying that she was doing the heavy stuff. I don't know if maybe at first he was trying to stay on her good side and now he's afraid of basically dumping her in it because of the CPS stuff, because then she could use it against him. But I don't think either of those two were parenting these children adequately. And I think Lily and Jack were afraid of Daniel. Yeah, living with him, yelling and screaming, she'd have to be on something. Now, he said she was using the shatter pens, which is the really highly concentrated THC. Maybe she was just too stoned to care. Maybe that's where this is coming from. Maybe she was just observing it all and not doing anything about it because she was just too dulled from her shatter pens. Because she allowed this to happen. Not only did she allow this to happen, but those black eyes, they were warning signs. Him shoving her against a wall, that was a warning sign. But she stayed. Yeah, I agree. Dealing with Daniel, she would have to have been using something. Because it's just how it works with the dynamics in those sort of relationships. Like, well, not just if she said something, he would probably tell her to shut up. But she may have learned that by saying something, that it was making the situation worse. Because if he was in a rage and raging at one of the children and she asked him to stop, it's going to make him rage even more. So maybe she learnt not to interfere. Because a lot of the times in these sorts of situations, the passive partner learns not to interfere. But instead of just sitting and not interfering, she should have gotten herself and her children out of there. Yeah, look, the children should have been removed in the previous December. I feel sorry for her for the coercive relationship that she was in. And I know that will have caused a lot of trauma for her. But at the same time, she wasn't just responsible for herself. She was responsible for the well-being, for the safety of 3 children in her care. And because she didn't consider their needs or their safety, There's only one child left. Yes, I can understand the impacts of coercive control, of an abusive relationship. But what it boils down to at the end of the day is she chose herself over her children. She chose her and Daniel over her children. Maybe part of the reason why she... Oh, good one, Amira. Maybe part of the reason why she favoured the baby so much was because the baby was the golden child. It was Daniel's child. So by favouring her, on a subconscious level, she was protecting Lily and Jack. Because if she'd have shown any favouritism towards them, it would have riled him up even more. And yes, she saw what the property was like before she moved in. It wasn't that she thought Daniel was some great prince and she was moving into a huge mansion. She was moving into a rundown trailer with holes in the floor and no insulation. Way, miles away from her support network. So, she made choices that were the wrong choices for her children. Yeah, definitely in terms of addiction. If she was addicted to any sort of substance, then that is going to impact her ability to make the right choices for herself and her children. I mean, I'm the same. I do advocate for women who are victims of DV, who are victims of coercive control. But I draw the line when it comes to women who see their children being beaten. Let's just call it as it is. Somebody gave Jack one hell of a thumping when he got that black eye back in December. And we've heard that that is not the only time that he was at school with a black eye. So, she made a choice. And I wonder, I'd be curious to know, and I hope investigators have spoken to Cindy about this. I'd be curious to know if Malaya ever cancelled any visits with Cindy at the last minute. Because I'd be 100% certain that Cindy never saw any signs of this abuse. That Cindy never got to see the black eyes and things firsthand. Maybe early on, and maybe they were excused away as Daniel's story of, Jack ran into the door handle once. But you can bet that after the first instance or two, that Malaya would have made sure that nobody else saw any injuries on those children. Because she knew she was doing the wrong thing. Anyway, let's go on to listening about this Jack wandering off story.
And
now, is that the time that he supposedly ran away and they found him outside of a school or something or other?
yeah, there's actually a police report done on that as well. And yeah, he ran away from 20 minutes when we lived at Patty's house. I was at work, and Malaya called me and said that, Jack ran away. And a staff member at the school stopped Jack because he made it to the other side of the soccer field by the school. And law enforcement was called. And if that family member if that school staff member would have never stopped Jack from that running across that soccer field, he got to the other end of it, he would have went into the woods. So forever grateful for that school staff member. I don't know who they are, but they did a great act that day.
Wow. Okay, so I went searching for. Now, I could have sworn that the original story was that I heard it in an audio form. Maybe Janie relayed it and not Daniel? Or maybe I have screenshots of him giving the story. But I couldn't find it. I thought it was in the DT interview. And maybe I just need to go back through that again more carefully. Because it doesn't match. This story's changed. Yes. Well spotted, Dodie. Again, we have a 20-minute interval. So Malaya found them. Oh, sorry. He ran away for about 20 minutes. Sounds like this is their version of the liars often land on number 3 for some reason. I have no idea why, but it is something that has been pointed out by psychologists. So, in terms of him coming out with 20 minutes, everything's 20 minutes. When they rang 911, how long have the children been missing? 20 minutes? And, Malaya woke up at about 20 past 8 and saw them, or Daniel woke up at 20 past 8, or one of them did. And then there was something else about 9:20. Everything's 9:20 or 20 minutes. Now, breaking this down, so it's talking about when they're at Paddy's. Oh, I'm just reading this. There is a chance that MBM didn't know Daniel gave the children injuries. Sometimes it's hard to believe, but firsthand, my perpetrator never hurt our children physically, but the dog. He told you your dog was ran over by a car. Oh, that's heartbreaking. That is so heartbreaking. And evil, pure evil. Wow. Who runs away at age 2? Maybe if you were in the habit of going to the playground, maybe you might just take yourself there on your own. But what he's saying here, Jack, he's saying Malaya called him at work and said, Jack ran away. But the way he's saying it, it sounds like she rang him after the fact, like after Jack had been found, which, for starters, seems odd because you would think that would just be something that you would share at the end of the day when he got home. Anyway, that's a small thing. But note how when he's telling this, there's lots of pauses. There's lots of repeated words. He's trying to access this story as he goes along. The question is he trying to remember what Malaya told him? Or is he trying to access a story that he's made up before and trying to remember what the details were that he shared? The reason I say that, and I'll get to that in a minute, but there's a lot of language in this that tell me that this never ever happened. Yeah, so Princess Pillow, you're spot on. First of all, so much repetition. You know, when he's like, when we lived at Paddy's, his brain is trying to stop him from blurting out this great big lie. So he can't even get full sentences out because they're not the truth. And he's like, Jack ran away. She eventually, a staff member at the school, stopped Jack because he made it to the other side of the soccer field. Well, that changes. The original story was something about a junkyard, and that Jack had gone all the way through a junkyard and was almost at the school playground or something like that. This is why I'm frustrated that I couldn't find it yesterday when I was looking for it, because I do need to find that original thing, and I'll go back and have another look in the audio from DT. But the original story had him going through a junkyard to a school and then getting like on the school oval or something like that. It didn't have him getting all the way across the oval, I think, from memory. And I wish I had it in front of me to be certain, but I think from memory the story was given that he got onto the school playground or the school oval, and that it was lucky that a staff member found him, because otherwise, had he got across the oval, he could have gotten into the woods. So here, the junkyard's completely gone, and now it's the football oval that he's got all the way across. And then you have this staff member that just happens to stop him. And then he fumbles around law enforcement being called. Now, had this happened in the way that he describes it, yes, if you were at a school and a 2-year-old had come wandering across the oval with no parent in tow, you probably would call law enforcement. But I just don't think any of it happened. And that's why I think he stumbles around before he says about law enforcement being called, because the event never happened. So law enforcement was never called. Yep, Daniel is the only person telling this story. This story only came out probably about somewhere between 3 to 6 months ago. It is certainly nothing that was relayed to detectives at the beginning of the case. It's not something that's in the documents. And we know that there's this court case going on right now with CPS. So he's probably using this. He's probably been saying this to CPS. Malaya told me this happened. And then if they go looking for a police file, who's probably going to say, well, maybe they didn't actually make a proper file about it. Maybe they just brought him home and that's all. But you know what's missing from this story? And this is something that is huge. Because if this really happened, then there would be the whole bit in the middle between a staff member finding him and then Malaya finding him, in terms of how did Malaya know that he was at the school? Did the police just door knock and say, we're looking for the parent of a 2-year-old child? Or did Malaya just happen to run across to the school and see a police car there and then see Jack? And then, like, there's no explanation of that. And if something like this happened, that would be a huge part of the story that would be relayed. So, you know, he was away for, 20 minutes. And then, this staff member found him. But the other thing that makes it sound really fake to me is this whole so thankful to this person. It's like, first of all, he screws up and he says, well, if that family member never, if that school staff member, I'm wondering if maybe it's a simple incident of they were playing on the play equipment and Jack ran across the oval and they were there with him. And that's why he slips up with that family member. Maybe there is a small incident behind this. A case of them being at a park somewhere playing on the equipment and Jack runs off across the oval. But the slip up between a family member and a staff member, to me, if this really happened, why would he slip up and say that? But the overemphasis on how grateful he is to this person. You know, if this person had never stopped Jack from running across that soccer field, if he got to the other end of it, he would have went into the woods. Well, he's just contradicted himself then and there. Because, first of all, he said, because he's going out of his way to discredit Malaya, in my opinion. He said that he had gotten to the other side of the soccer field by the time he was found. That's what he says first. But then he says that he's so thankful to this staff member because if they hadn't have stopped him from running across that soccer field and he got to the other end, he would have gone into the woods. Well, which is it? Either he was all the way across the soccer field, headed into the woods, or they stopped him before that happened, so that he's thankful that they stopped him because had he got all the way across, he would have run into the woods. It's even his story there doesn't match up. But the going over the top, like, you know, if they had never done this, then, and he got to the other, like, he's, forever grateful for that staff member. I don't know who they are, but they did a great act that day. What? Daniel needs to get off the drugs. Because the way he's saying that makes it sound like someone jumped into a swimming pool and rescued a child that was drowning. Not stopped a child from running across an oval. He's elevating it to a level of Jack was in some mortal peril. And this staff member is a hero for saving Jack from some sort of mortal peril. Whereas the account that he's giving here is Jack ran across the oval, or the field, whatever you call it. Or Jack didn't run across the field because the staff member stopped him before he could. Take your pick, because there's two versions of that. Yes, I think Jack was quite independent in terms of if he wanted to do something, he was going to do it. And I think Daniel resented that. I think maybe there was a bit of pushback from Jack with if Daniel got angry over things, then Jack probably was pushing back a bit. And that's probably why Jack seems to have been the main target. But he uses a lot of, like, if I look at the words that I've highlighted. Oh, he did too. Daniel said it took 20 minutes to take his blood for the DNA test. Yep, squeezing his finger for 20 minutes to get like 4 drops of blood. Okay, Daniel. Yep, sure, go for it. It's definitely all about the 20-minute thing. Good point. Well caught. I'd forgotten about that. So a lot of ums, but then we have, it's not just a staff member, it's like a staff member. And lots of repetition and all this. I'm so grateful. Just the language of it, to me, says this is a complete utter BS story. Yeah, running into the woods is what Daniel wanted to push at that time. I agree. What he's trying to say here, I think he's hedging his bets. I think this story probably originated around the time when people were pushing back about the Malaya took the kids story. And I think to hedge his bets and also get at Malaya, he's giving an example of, well, Jack almost ran into the woods before. But it just doesn't hit home because he's changed the story. And he's being overly persuasive in terms of, so grateful for this person that rescued him from this mortal peril. It really sounds like a Daniel lie to me. I think the thing I've noticed, and maybe it's just because the DT show was the first time that he went onto a YouTube channel, because in all his interviews with media up until that point, he never outright lied. He only kind of hinted at things enough to make the audience draw their own conclusion. But then he got onto the DT show, and all of a sudden, clearly he was on something that night when he was speaking to the turkey guy. Because all of a sudden he's coming up with stories like that there were 2 pink blankets, which has been confirmed by RCMP. There were not 2 pink blankets. they retrieved 2 pieces of blanket which they matched as being from the same blanket. There was no second blanket. If you listen to the dispatch audio, there is only ever one mention of a piece of blanket. Yeah, he did sit there with a grin on his face and the lizard lips going all the time, making comments, and then the little tongue pops out like, hey, guess what? This is a big fat lie. But it seems like he got a taste of it, and I don't know if it's from listening to Durwood, because Durwood was coming out with some really bold-faced lies. And I don't know if Daniel went, hey, I like this strategy, I'm going to try it for myself. But it seems like the turning point for him was the DT show, when he just decided, yeah, I'm just going to just make up complete utter BS stories and people believe me. I may be mistaken, but I thought at one point he said a child from the school found Jack. He probably did. I think there's been a lot of different versions of it given by Daniel. I'd love to find even just that first version that I mentioned to do a proper comparison, and it is something that I will try and do, because I know this story has changed. There was definitely a bit about it about him running through a junkyard, and he'd just basically gotten onto the oval. And now here it's all the way across the oval. And that does ring a bell about a child from the school finding Jack. He's just, the lives are getting bigger from Daniel. And the question that I asked the other day is, he couldn't be saying these sort of lies to RCMP because he knows that they would push back and that they can verify things that he says. So why is he coming out and making public lies that are basically going to come back and bite him in the ass? This audio that is out here now, with him on the Turkey show, with him on Charmaine's, with him on Sunny's, you can bet that law enforcement have gone through all that audio so carefully. You can bet that they have transcripts of that audio, and that they are highlighting all the lies and all the inconsistencies. And these are going to come back and be used against him in court. The guy's basically providing his own prosecution. You don't understand why they aren't in jail yet even for their past abuse. It's interesting because with Harmony Montgomery, they basically locked up Anna Montgomery for the abuse before they even hit him for ending Harmony's life. But I think, based on what we're seeing here, based on these charges against Daniel, I think the goal here is to just focus on this criminal case and to have it so airtight that when arrests are made, when this goes to court, that there is absolutely nothing that a defence attorney can do to make it go away. And look, Daniel's helping them out. The more they sit back and wait, the more he comes out and provides more material for the prosecution. Yeah, that's what I believe he emphasizes that he was at work and that Jack was in Malaya's care. Conveniently, Jack was 2 when that happened. Well, when the children went missing, the baby was 16 months old. The baby is now the same age that Jack was when he allegedly ran off on Malaya. It definitely sounds to me like an attempt to discredit Malaya and say if she has custody of the baby, she's not going to be able to even stop the baby from running away. Like, that's what he's trying to do here. That's what he's been doing for the past 13 months. He's been going out of his way to discredit Malaya. Yes, definitely. Neither Jack or Malaya will get the baby back until Lily and Jack are found. And given that we've been told by RCMP that almost certainly Lily and Jack are deceased, then they're never going to get the baby back. Yeah, at 2, they only run a few feet away from you. So true, so true. You know, it's the way their brains are wired. It's a survival thing that is part of who we are. A 2-year-old is not going to go that far from their own world of safety. It's just not. Yes, they might run across the oval if you're playing on play equipment and they see a puppy dog and they forget. But they're not going to go far. They're probably going to turn around and come back when they realise they're on their own. It really feels to me like the story is just not even close to being truthful. And then the over-exaggeration with the, oh, so grateful to this staff member because, you know, it was going to be such a catastrophic disaster. It could well be that the baby will be put up for adoption. I think nothing like that will happen until there's a resolution for this case. So it could be that the baby ends up in care for a while. But I mean, I don't know what the protocols would be. I think because it would depend on how much information CPS have about Jack and Lily's case. Now, if they have been given information by RCMP, like confidentially, that this is essentially a criminal case and that there are going to be arrests in the future, then they would be acting according to that. But I don't think that they could actually turn around and put the baby up for adoption until RCMP name it up as a criminal case. They have to follow their lead. Because on paper at the moment this is a missing children's investigation. Meaning that even if the baby has been removed from their care because of negligence or something, that would have to be the reason they have given. Because children go missing. CPS don't step in and take the other siblings just because a child has gone missing. And because RCMP aren't naming it up as a criminal case, technically they would not be able to step in and take the baby by saying, well, this is a criminal investigation, so for the safety of the baby, we have to take the baby. Because on paper, that's not the situation. So probably sound like I'm going around in circles here, but basically all they've got in terms of reasoning for having custody of the baby is to do with how she was being looked after, to do with neglect. So they can expect the parents to do courses and things like that. But in terms of turning around and saying, right, now we don't believe that you can ever have custody of the baby again, I don't think they can say that until the case becomes a criminal case. Because on paper, this is just a CPS case of parents who have not adequately looked after the child. And the policy usually is to encourage parents to help parents to learn how to be good parents. Does that make sense? Some of Wells' brothers were adopted by family members and never got to go home. That is true. That was a long time, though, after Summer went missing that they were adopted. They were originally put into care. And I wonder if the various charges against Don, and I know that he never got convicted, but I wonder if the charges against Don played into that. But that's a really good point. I think in terms of Summer, I think in terms of Summer, I mean, that was sounds like that was a long, ongoing thing. None of the Wells boys wanted to go home either. Yeah. It's hard to say, but based on the only facts that we have, if we have Daniel saying he has to do all these courses, if we have claims that Malaya's being given occasional visits in her home with the baby, that to me suggests that CPS are still working with them on some level, and that I think they'll never get the baby back. Don't get me wrong, they'll never get the baby back. But I would imagine if you look at it from a legal perspective, if this was a situation where two children had gone missing and the parents weren't suspects in any way whatsoever, but the other child had been taken into custody due to neglect, would they be quick to adopt them out? I'm not sure. I think my brain's fried over this one now because I was confident that until the case pivots, until the direction of the case is known for certain, that they wouldn't adopt the baby out. but who knows? It really depends on what information they have in the background in terms of why they took the baby in the first place, I guess. Yeah, with Summer's case, the house was really bad, and that's probably one of the reasons the boys didn't go home. That body language, though, that interview where Don was talking to a reporter and he had one of the boys next to him and he had his arm around him, but he pretty much had him he had him locked next to him. Like he was trying to remind him to keep his mouth shut or something. Just the body language with that one interview. That always alarmed me. So I wonder if those boys were afraid of going back home. But there's not only that. There was an accusation about the older boy, and I won't give his name in this instance, but wasn't there an accusation about the older boy attempting the same sort of things that Don used to do with an underage female? Yeah, that boy did look scared in that interview. Just the red flags. Do I think Hunter had anything to do with it? I think the relationship between Hunter and Candace was definitely more than what they were saying. And I trust Chris McDonough's instincts on that as well. But the way that Candace was talking, I can't help wondering if not so much having something to do with it, but that Hunter knows that something happened. I mean, he gives the story about seeing Summer go under the water. And in his version of the story, she was under the water for quite some time and he had to run in and rescue her. And from memory, I mean, I have to listen back through all this. From memory, according to Candace, it was nothing at all like that. And I wonder if him and Candace were sitting there drinking and vaping and not paying any attention, and something did happen there while Summer was swimming. Because I still believe, and I've not found anything to convince me otherwise, I still believe that by the time that that vehicle returned to the property, that Summer was deceased. Candace's story about Summer leaping out of the car and running across and all from there on in, the story just sounds so fabricated. And I think that the reality of the situation is that they returned to the property and Summer was deceased in the back of that car. I don't know if it's got anything to do with the incident at the lake or whether it's got something to do with the things that they bought for Grandis. did Grandis have gummies that the kids got into? I know that's something that was speculated early on. She does. In that photo of Summer in the car, it's disturbing. She looks deceased. Even Chris McDonough says that it does not look right. And that is a seasoned detective. I just don't think that she was alive when she made it home. And there's also just these bits and pieces coming back to me now. Ali said to Chris that when Candace took Hunter home, when she dropped Hunter home, Ali was going to go over to the car and say hello to Summer or see Summer or something like that, and Candace told her that no, because Summer's sleeping, and wouldn't let her go over to the car. I think I saw somewhere you heard that that's why the older boy hasn't been adopted. That it's because of what he's done to other children, but it hasn't been substantiated. Yeah, the original story, I think, came from Don's sister, didn't it? I think this was before Summer went missing, and I think Don had gone somewhere to do some work, and he'd taken the oldest boy with him. And I think that's when the incident occurred. From memory. It's a while since I've looked at Summer's case. I occasionally, Don Bear occasionally pops up in my feed on YouTube, and I love listening to what he has to say because he's logical, he keeps it brief, and it's usually just a quick comment on something that's happening at the time. But other than that, I really haven't followed it in ages. So I'd have to brush up on those things. Sorry, just having a bit of a yawn there. Yeah, what child wouldn't wake up after being put on cold milk? She stopped and she bought that big, giant thing of milk. And Summer's there, lying on milk. Honestly, the moment I heard that FBI is involved, that just gave me some hope. But the big concern for me, though, is that Rose Bly has never been found. Now, that does sound like a DV situation. But how do we know that Don wasn't somehow involved in that cover-up? If Rose Bly has never been found, is it possible that they know how to make sure that Summer will never be found also? I don't know. But hopefully, with the FBI having stepped in, maybe there will finally be justice for Summer. Because it's been too long. I think TBI dropped the ball really early on. And it's a case that has just... It's gone on for too long when it seems so clear that the parents are responsible. I truly, truly hope that with the FBI coming in, that we do see justice for Summer. We can only hope. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. And I must admit, I'm now keen to dig back into Summer's case a little bit. I'm not sure if I'll do it as content. But when Summer first went missing, for probably the first at least 6 months, until the case turned into a complete utter circus, I was watching multiple content creators. Chris and Josh were my number one go-tos. I did watch Michelle After Dark for quite a while, until there was a point where she became very set with her opinion. And she was not very friendly towards subscribers who did not agree with her belief of what happened. And I stopped following her content with regards to Summer's case then, because I felt that she was not looking at other things. Maybe I got it wrong. Yeah, I did watch the Dr. Phil show. That was a doozy as well. I think Candace definitely has a very low IQ. She has a very low emotional IQ. And that certainly showed there. I think, given more time, I think that Chris McDonough could have got some information out of Candace. But her reaction on the Dr. Phil show, that was just mind-blowing. I think that gave away a lot. But I have to say, that was one of the instances where I really like the behaviour panel, but there are some times when they just get it wrong. And from memory, that was one of the cases. There was an Australian case where they did get it horribly wrong. They were accusing the parents of being responsible. And even before little Cleo was found, I was saying, no way, they're not responsible. And then she was found and it had been an abduction. And the behaviour panel had been all out accusing the parents. Did Don and Candace take a polygraph? I don't think they did. I think Dr. Phil offered it, and I think they refused to do so, didn't they? This is all stuff that I've forgotten. I think I do need to just go through and do a recap for myself, just to go back to the beginning and remind myself of all these bits and pieces that I looked at so much at first, but I can't quite remember now of all the details. But I think they declined to do a polygraph. Could be wrong, but I think that was the situation. Anyway, thanks for coming in. I have thoroughly enjoyed reading people's comments here in chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed having you guys in here just going through this with me. And I've actually enjoyed talking about Summer's case as well. And I think I might do a members only discussion on Summer. Yeah, they do get quite a few wrong. I know people hold them in high regard in terms of the behaviour panel, but there's a number of times when they've got it wrong. And dare I say it, because I know there's a lot of people who idolise the deception detective, but he hasn't had it right every time either. Now, this is coming from someone who's not actually a statement analyst, but there have been times when it's been so glaringly obvious that they've got it wrong. Anyway, thanks for coming in. Please hit the like button on your way out, because that will help me immensely. If you are someone listening on replay, please leave a comment. And if you are new, please do subscribe. Keep an eye out. I will be attempting to do another live stream in the next couple of days. It will be members only first, and then I will make it public after it is finished. So keep an eye out, but I'll make sure that I do put out a notification for people so you can join me. Thanks for coming in, and I'll catch you in the next one.